Hello to everybody watching this. My name's Ahmed Al Banna, and welcome to episode number 6 of the Booming With Banna podcast. We're slowly approaching the 10 episode mark, and I think today is a really good way to get there. Today I'm joined with Miss Sara Zaini, who is the co-founder of Emkan Education, and she has quite the story, and I'm very happy to have her here for today's episode. Can you please tell me and the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, ahlan wa sahlan. I'm really happy to be with you here, Ahmed. It's an honor. My name is Sara Zaini, a co-founder of Emkan Education. It's a human capital development advisory based in Saudi Arabia, and we've been working in the country for the past 10 years now. So this year is pretty significant to us because we're hitting the 10-year mark.
The decade.
Yeah. So a lot to reflect on and a lot to be grateful for as well.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I think the number one thing so with all the guests that I've had, they've always it's been a business or some entrepreneurial venture and all these things. But for me, what interests me the most in that aspect is, why did you know that you wanted to create your own thing? Because there's a big difference between working for something and then creating your own thing. So what indicated to you that this is what I want to start?
Yeah. Interesting question. Because maybe I've done a lot of trial and error. I tried working for the private sector, large organization, and then I worked at another startup, of course, under the private sector for a number of years. And then I had a reaction and I wanted to do something extremely big and massive. So I joined a public university, and I was teaching there for a number of years. But then maybe after the 4th or 5th year, I was just not happy. Being a government employee, it was not for me. The process and you're restricted right and left, and you just have to follow a procedure because it's a massive organization. It's not catered for your needs. It does not speak to you at the individual level. It's the system. It's a national system, so you'll have to follow the system. So I resigned, and that was quite revolutionary because at the school where I was teaching, School of Education, I was training teachers there. I was the first female to actually resign. So to them, it was a shock, and they did not even know how to process my paperwork.
What time was this happening?
That was before 2010.
Okay.
Around that time. Actually, maybe 2011, 2012. But I was sure, 100% sure, that was not for me. But before I made that jump, because again, job security is very important for me. I need to wake up every morning and have a job to attend to and something to do. So I was approached by my friends, actually, who are now my partners of 10 years, Basma and Munira. Basma Bushnag and Dr. Munira Jamjoom. And we, over dinner, decided to establish Emkan Education because the vision was to do something that's really connect the dots within the ecosystem, because it was very fragmented. People at the policy level were not talking to schools. Schools were not really aware of the changes for at the government level. So that was the initial idea.
What exactly do you think did you see in the teaching part in your government job that you didn't like, and how has your role in Emkan helped to fix that?
Okay. Most of our work is at the policy level at Emkan Education, and we do a lot of work now, actually, at the grassroots level. What I did not like at the university where I was teaching is the restrictions in terms of how you design the curriculum and what you're able to teach. And then the massive amount of paperwork. So that was time consuming, and it had a negative effect on me and a negative effect on the students as well. I could see the enthusiasm and how students are full of life within the first year, and then it slowly goes down. By the time they graduate, they just want to graduate.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be the case. It should be more practical. So we've been publishing a lot at Emkan to bring education in general, be it at the higher education level or K-12, like yourself, to be closer to real life, like equip you with the skills you actually need
Yeah.
to succeed.
Yeah. Do you think this also applies like to a high school level? Because what you said, like the part where you're just, khalas, you want to graduate. I see that so much now in my classes where I have seniors. Like they're done, they've applied to university, their courses, transcript, essays, all this is done. And now semester two, like it's a burden to go to school. Like obviously we can't blame them. Like you want to get it over with. But in your opinion, what do you think is the biggest thing that as a school or as a teacher someone can do to liven up that last few months before they leave, to make it really they want to wake up to go back to school?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, actually, that's an interesting point because you see that also in kids. Children in kindergarten, they're full of life and they enjoy it, maybe first grade, second grade, but then as the academics become more intense, they kind of lose that energy. So there are different things that if I were to design the ideal school, different things I would do, starting with stress management. There is a certain amount of stress that's actually healthy because life is stressful, especially if you, like myself, yani, decide to have your own company. That's just recipe for lifelong stress.
You're asking for it, yeah.
So I think that stress, to an extent, preps you for life. Once you get into university, that's also very stressful. You're going to have a lot of different professors and different internships and what have you. But I think we overdo it. And back in the days when I was in high school, and that was in the 90s, it was more straightforward. It was just one track, the national track. No such thing as an international school. There were, but it was a very limited number of schools. It was not mainstream. And you graduate, and for a girl, I only had two options, either the public university or the private university. And that was it. Yeah. So, and even the application requirements and the admission requirements were not as strict. But now I get a lot of phone calls from parents, and I honestly feel I have a lot of empathy for parents and students because the process, the application process for universities now, it's a different ball game. Yeah. It's very tedious.
100%.
Yeah.
And on like we're just recently right now, I was applying to this one program and it asked me for a couple of essay prompts. And just for fun, like it doesn't mean anything now. I'm in 11th grade, but I was like, let me give it a shot. Let me try and write this stuff. The amount of like self-reflection and like how much I have to squeeze my brain to answer why I'm doing what I'm doing at the age of like 16 or 17, it's very difficult. But then other seniors that I speak to, they're like, this is a very important part of my life. It helped me self-reflect a lot on the person who I am. In that way, how can we increase self-reflection for people to really understand why they're doing what they're doing and not just business major, university, khalas, I'm done. Why they're doing what they're doing, but don't make it a stressful and a tedious thing that they don't want to do.
I believe self-reflection is underestimated in this part of the world. A lot of self-reflection should drive your decision-making for you to find joy. Nobody can enforce joy. It's not extrinsic, it's intrinsic. It should come from within.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that work, I think it would be very difficult for you to find joy in anything you do. Even if you go to your dream school or you study your dream program, you really have to dig deeper and understand why you're doing what you're doing.
I also think from many of like the adults that I speak to, they're always like, don't do the same mistake I did and work a job that you actually love or do something that you actually love so that you enjoy doing it every day. And even Steve Jobs speaks about this. He says, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. In that case, like obviously you must love what you're doing. Does it feel like work to you, or do you feel like it's just part of your life and this is the role, the shape of or the piece of the puzzle that you're supposed to fit in?
Yeah, I get a lot of that. people ask me, not about my job at Emkan, but if you should pursue your passion. And I think that's a gray area, a massive gray area.
Yeah.
It's very tricky. Like I do what I love genuinely. I love my clients, and I'm emotionally invested in every single project. Sometimes I don't sleep at night thinking about what to say and how to say it and what to write and how to solve a client's problem. But I was burned out. It's my company.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love what I do. But I went through burnout. And I see that a lot. When you pursue your passion blindly with with nothing to stop you. So you work 24/7. That becomes a problem. So you always have to maintain that work-life balance and schedule your breaks and just take care of yourself, basically.
Would you have if you could go back in time and start your own company again? Would you do it? And I only ask because just recently, this one company, Nvidia, it's one of Intel computer stuff. One of their competitors, they just blew up just recently. And there was an interview with their CEO and their founder, and they asked him, "Would you start Nvidia again if you could go back in time?" And it's worth billions now, but he said no, he wouldn't. And he said it's because if back then he knew the stress and the problems and the issues that he'd have to take on as a founder and CEO and all this, he doesn't think it's worth that final goal. Do you see it the same way at starting your own company in general? Would you go back and do it? And if you did, how
Knowing
would it
what
be
I know
different?
now.
Yeah, knowing what you know now and the burnout and all this sleepless nights, would you have decided to do this back then?
100%. 100%. If I go back in time, I would have started with it maybe even earlier. But going through that, like I can relate to the experience you just mentioned. When I see anyone who's at the top of the pyramid or on the cover of any magazine, young global leader, whatever big accomplishment that we usually look up to, I know they paid a very huge price, a very expensive price for it. And I'm not talking about it financially, but health-wise,
in time and
time-wise.
stress. Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. I missed out on so many family occasions because I was out of town. I missed out on my kids' celebrations in school. I had to because there were other urgent priorities I needed to attend to at the time. So you find yourself making very difficult decisions the whole time. And to me, it's worth it.
Why do you think so? Why is it worth it to, like you just said, like to sacrifice, the really crucial moments of your children or with your family to start a company? Why do you, and I have a take on this, but I want to see what you think first.
Okay, so it's not black and white. It's not that I prioritize attending a meeting over, for example, my kid's graduation.
Right.
It's not like that. It's a matter of just constant prioritizing. So if you have a couple of things taking place at the same time and you have to make a decision, you'll make a decision based on the different variables within that.
Right.
So, for example, I missed on a classroom presentation for my kid's school. I made sure that my mom attends so my kid doesn't stand up and he's all alone. And I knew that there would be another opportunity. At that, going to that specific example, I had a major signing of a major deal that would really impact and diversify my income at the company. And it was it was a historical moment for Emkan. So I needed to attend to that. So it's a matter of really just pros and cons of everything.
Yeah.
I, for example, have had to cancel all my meetings in the afternoon last week to attend to a family event because I knew that the meetings I had were concurrent, they're frequent. So the point is, it's not black or white. It's not that you prioritize work the whole time. It's what
the
a matter
situation
of
asks
exactly,
for. Yeah.
exactly.
Honestly, like if I have zero experience, like a company, I've started a few things on my own, But I think for me, the biggest thing, because obviously with all the like academics and the clubs and all this stuff, there is a lot of time sacrifice and sacrifice with your friends and all these things. But for me, I think the main reason I do it, it's because I I don't want to see myself in whatever community I'm in as only participating. And I think everyone should see it that way. I think should like also be changing stuff. So I feel like for me, if I like in that scenario, instead of what you said, like the priority and all of this, for me, I would have like not gone to this or whatever, because I think I also play a role not only as a parent or family member, all this, but also in changing the world, or at least that's how I see it from my 16-year-old brain, at least.
Yeah, yeah. But you know what? I also do what I do, and I put in the crazy hours of work every day, is because I want my kid to grow up and to see that this is an option. This is how you work. This is how you excel. I don't want him to see a mother or a father who would just check out by 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. and that's life. That's work.
It's been like a role model.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. And I make sure that I spend quality time with my family. I try every day. There is still a huge room for improvement.
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to have to be honest. But I try to focus on quality over quantity as much as possible.
Yeah, giving them your full attention in that sense.
Yes.
One of the things I did, like I mentioned, was how with all this stuff, you need to sacrifice, time with friends, sacrifice even friends, all this. You said that you founded this with your friends. When if over my very subtle experience, there is a very thin line between your business partner and your friend. And sometimes there are overlaps that happen which can affect the business part, which then implies an effect on your friendship as well. How did you know that you wanted to work with your friends in a way that was foolproof or safe? Because working with your friends doesn't always mean it'll go well. It might be fun, but it might not go well. So how did you know that your friends are also business partners?
I think it was fate, honestly. Yani, maybe we did not really think it through a lot. But I like them in principle. I like Munira and I like Basma. I like spending time with them. I like bouncing off ideas with them. And we've done some schoolwork together back in college because we went to university together. So yeah, there was this good energy. It felt good. And at the time when we wanted to establish Emkan, we knew that we complemented each other with our experience, with our education.
Yeah.
So there is this technical side of it. I'm partnering up with you because I know you complement me.
You complete the...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And does it complicate friendships? 100%. Yes. And it was scary because, to be very honest, I have seen lots of startups built based on partnerships and they break up at some point in time. You lose the business and you lose the friendship. Yeah. And I didn't want that to happen. But I think maybe the second point and why we're still here 10 years later is because we don't believe in a breakup.
Yeah.
We're in it together forever. Yeah. It's a complex relationship, but it's a very strong one that I'm really proud of. And I'm very happy that I put in the work. We put in the work to make it happen.
Do you think that's a trait in successful people who end up doing things, that part of you didn't believe in a breakup? You didn't believe that it would fail in general. Is that something you find concurrent with it's a pattern in any successful person you've met, that they don't believe that there's an option to fail or to stop or to quit?
Yeah, to an extent, but sometimes it's smart to know when to quit and when to call things off. Like we've had that sometimes with some projects or some opportunities that we try to pursue, but it's just sometimes it's not the right time.
Yeah.
You have to, it's smart to know when to walk out.
how can you enhance that skill? I feel because it's very hard to, a project you've put everything into, and then you decide to step back. This isn't for me, or doesn't work for us in general. What do you think are the biggest indicators of when to step back and call it a day on a project or on a business or a club, whatever it may be?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it depends on the context, Ahmed. It depends on what you're trying to do. If it's a national project with hundreds of millions, it's a different case
Yeah,
than a small club. Uh, but what helps me make that decision when I calculate the loss of trying to make it work in comparison to the potential gains.
yeah,
That's a formula that I try to think of to help me make a better decision.
I see. And I think that's what I think I enjoy the most about like this, what you're saying right now, is how even though you're speaking strictly from like your experience in business, a lot of it applies to also like the average student's life about knowing when to let something go, when to call it a day, whether you're like for studying for a test, when to stop and say, Khalas, I need to focus on this other thing as well. So I
Yeah.
think for me, that's the most interesting part. Again, back on the concept of friends, you said you guys worked together in the beginning and all this launched. What are a few character traits that you think you find in a good friend, you think you find in a good business partner, and you think you find in both?
Respect. Respect all the way. Someone who respects you. Because you in business run into countless situations every day where, for example, in a meeting, you disagree with someone, but you need to share your perspective in a respectful way.
Yeah,
You respect and honor the person in front of you, although you fully disagree with them. I think that's a skill. It's something you learn because when you're young, you're just passionate.
yeah.
You want to
Put
share.
yourself out there.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And you would think that maybe that's strong character or that is just shows how strong you are, but that's not the case.
right.
Yeah.
I also think that's such a big thing that we can um, teach a bit more about the respect part. I think not just like for between you to your teacher, but also with your classmates, because I think like if we're looking at the concept of respect alone,
Mm.
it's also understanding when to shut up, when to know what to say, when to say it. And I used to like struggle with this when I was younger, but I'm slowly learning about it now, which is why I enjoy the concept. And adding on to respect, this is up here. What are a few other things that you also notice that you find in your friends as well? Like for me, let example, I go out into a new school, I'm trying to make new friends, just friends. What do you look for? Because some people say friends for fun, I like let me just have fun while I'm here, and others friends for projects like yours. Which side would you take? Should you mix both, and what characteristics do you look into?
Uh, School context is very different than business.
Yeah,
Maybe the closest to it, because I know your audience are mainly students, I think the closest thing is working on a group project. Because I used to hate that.
yeah,
Because sometimes managing the group is even more difficult than the actual assignment, what
yeah.
you have to do, managing expectations and the different personalities and assigning a leader and all of that. It's not fun. It wasn't fun for me.
Right.
But I think that's a great opportunity for school students to get a glimpse of what real life looks
Yeah, it
like.
looks like.
Yeah, that's teamwork. That's your project team. And you have to make it work.
Do you think that your friends should be success driven, like driven to make it work, or like some other people see it, just enjoying life? Because again, like in a not even a high school, like in university, like there's a difference between the friend that wants to start a business with you and the friend that wants to go out biking or go out to a cafe. And
Yeah.
and I'm saying not sometimes like an always doing this friend. and then a friend who does this and a bit of the other stuff as well. But this is their main focus. And the thing that I'm trying to get at really is, which should we value more in our society? People who are success driven, or people who are driven by their mental health, technically?
But why is it this or that?
I mean, you've just stated, like, when you started this, the strain it had on you yourself and the mental health aspect of it, it's horrible. But it launched, like, it all the way up here, right? And I think with many other successful people, or this is interesting. Let me just take a step back. What do you define success as?
Yeah. Let me take it a step back.
Okay.
I think there is something to take and learn from every single person.
Okay.
Even it's the friend who is just at coffee shops, drinking coffee, not reading, not doing anything. There is something in them that you can learn from.
Yeah.
Every single person. And it's not that you need to associate yourself with that profile in specific, but to also, so you associate yourself with a group that you aspire to, people who you look up to. You have, it's natural.
Yeah.
Basically, you become friends with people you have things in common with, but it doesn't mean that you're higher or lower
Yeah.
than any other
person,
profile.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is success? That's like a
It's
10-hour episode.
Yeah.
It really depends.
And like, for some context, this weekend I went to one of my friend's house and I met with a friend, and my mom told me come back home 9. We spent 2 hours. I came back home at 11, talking about defining what success is. Because like in the start of the conversation, what I said is, I said it's changing the world on a very large magnitude. In, like, for you to, like, for me to search up my name, see it there, and for a good reason, I define that as success. But the other person said, like, their counter argument is, would you say that your immigrant parents who come to Saudi Arabia or go to the US are not successful because they don't have a page on social media or whatever that's famous? And then I'm like, no, they are successful, but then it contradicts my meaning to it. So it's very subjective, but if there is a baseline measurement of how we can define this, how would you put it?
Yeah. Okay. So when I was your age, and maybe a little bit older, maybe up until my early 20s, I defined success as something major, something massive. It's not only based on the impact of what you do, but also financial. You need to be rich, and you need to be famous, and you need to be all of that. And I think we also live in a community that glorifies that. And for example, we were featured at a cover of a magazine to talk about Emkan education. People approached me lovingly, congratulations on so and so, you made it to the cover, blah, blah, blah. And it just made me think that being out there in the media equals success in the heads of so many people. Like, you've made it, congratulations. Or if you, for example, do an interview for media, or you do a public presentation, any form of public appearance is considered as success.
Yeah.
Well, I think there are lots of other people who do much more, or maybe not featured in magazines. To me, success is being comfortable in what you do and how you do it, based on your own potential and your own aspirations. حقيقي. Now, I have terrible work-life balance. But I always tell myself, and I tell my husband, that these are our good years. We're young. We're still capable of putting in the hours. So it would be a shame that I don't use that
Yeah.
at this period of my life. It doesn't mean that I don't see my family or friends or have fun or honor myself or rest or whatever. But it means that, no, my priority at this phase in my life goes to work
Yeah.
and goes at building the career and leaving the impact I want.
Some people think that in the young years where you can put in the work are the same young years that you should be spending enjoying your life instead of putting in the hard work. Where do you stand on that? Because I can work very hard in my young years where I can do this, and then I live on 30 to whatever, very happy. And then there's also where I'm young and I'm still able, I go and have the most fun and enjoyment I possibly can, and then have to work after 30. These are the like two sides. Which do you think is the correct answer?
People are complicated. I I mean, my first response is, of course, you need to work. It's a process. It's not just you get a job magically when you're 30. 30 is actually too late.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all of that. But at the same time, going through what I went through and for all the interactions I had with people, I don't think there is one option for everyone. Some people need to take a gap year. Some people need to take some time off to do something else. And then they continue their education and they completely bounce back. And they continue as if they did not get that break to begin with.
Some people would go on this break and then never bounce back, right? What would you tell them on how to bounce back? And I feel like also this not only like it's when I'm at school and I have a winter break, 3 weeks long, and then I come back, it's very hard to bounce back. You know, some I could do it, sure. There are other students who spent a month getting back into that concept, back into their head of okay, I have tests, I have school, I have all of this stuff. So how would you advise someone in that shift, like shifting from a relaxed experience, whether it's summer vacation or a gap year or whatever, into going straight back to work?
I think it's the sense of urgency. You just need to remind yourself, why is this urgent? The minute you think it's not required, it's okay, I have some time and I'm young, that sense of urgency is the make it or break it factor.
Yeah.
I have seen a lot of my friends who were in a very comfortable context financially, and there was no sense of urgency. It's okay. They already live a very comfortable lifestyle. So they were slower to get into any field, to continue their education, not to continue their education, to excel in their education and to get a career and to put in the hours. So you just need to remember what do you want for yourself and create a sense of urgency around that. And sometimes parents need to push their kids as well.
I think also the other thing, and I was like thinking about this again with like, a couple of my friends, it's also realizing that when you're young and you're living comfortable, you have a safety net. Technically, if anything goes wrong, you always have mama, baba. They're always gonna help you get back up. So there's a safety net, and then it always gets to the issue of people knowing there's a safety net, depending on that safety net. And then there's the people who know there's a safety net, and because there is one, they'll take the risks in life and to see how things work out. So that's sort of my perspective on it. And one of the other things that come with these risks and these other things is people are complicated, like you said, and not everybody knows what they want to do at the end of high school. Not everybody knows what am I going to major in, all of this. And in a generation where in the Middle East, international schools are thriving, they send students abroad. It's a very big decision to pay thousands of dollars or euros or pounds to go study and not know what you want to study. What would you tell someone who's not sure of what they want to do in their final year of high school? They don't know what they want to do. everyone's pressuring them, university go, and it's going to be a waste of money, what would you tell them to do?
Don't quote me on it. It's just my opinion. I think they need to start with something, whatever it is, even if they're not 100% sure of it, because you might start a program and you think that you're destined to, for example, be a physicist or aerospace engineer. And maybe towards the end of it, you decide that maybe this was not meant for you,
Yeah.
and you need to do something else. The problem is staying too relaxed wouldn't give you options. So you need to put yourself out there to experiment and see.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with changing your major at any point in time. Not at any point
So
in
for them
time.
to experiment with it, see what
Yeah.
they can't do. What about those who don't believe in, they're not accustomed to the secondary education system, sit down, test all this, they hate this stuff and they're not interested in university. Is this a correct pathway? And is it a correct pathway for someone to step back and say, I'm not interested?
Mm. Can I say people are complicated again? But you know what? There is a lot of literature and this trend that you don't have to continue your education and get an undergrad and then continue with that. But I honestly disagree with it, because I think the purpose of college, again, this is my personal opinion, I think the purpose of college is not only to get you a career, it's to build your character, it's to form the connections, you grow in college. When I went to do my master's in New York, I kept telling people I graduated with 2 degrees. The first degree is the actual academics I did, and the second one is just life. Yeah, I'm very skeptical and hesitant to advise people not to continue their education, especially in a country where we're underperforming in literacy, in math, in the whole education system. So we're not producing lifelong learners. It's not like those kids who don't continue their education, they're going to get on a platform and attend online lessons.
Yeah.
We don't have the system for that.
If you weren't in this context, country, Middle East, all of this, anywhere in the world, would you still advise the same thing?
There are other variables to consider. Student loans, for example, if you're talking about the US, and then the tax you'll have to pay.
Yeah.
So I do understand it. Some people don't have the luxury to actually choose to continue their education, and they opt out for other options. And some people don't have the capability for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They cannot attend to a 4-year program. They need to do a 2-year diploma, for example. There has to be options, but for my kid, and what I don't regret doing myself, is continue my education.
Yeah. And when you go back to that loans part, because that's a very big part of all of, again, like international schools, and not every nationality has like Batha, like Saudi Arabians do, so it's very hard to pay for this university. Do you think it's still worth it if we're going somewhere abroad, like in the US, for example, or UK, to pay those thousands and thousands of dollars or pounds? Is it still worth it to get your degree at the end?
In general, I think higher education needs to be more practical. There is a push to redesign the programs, make them more relevant, so you really just walk out with the skills you need.
Yeah.
Not to teach you a skill, for example, because technology is evolving and it can be static. You have to keep learning. It's just a call for universities to be more relevant. Given all the gains that you would get and how competitive the job market is, I would push for students to continue their education and to actually add on that with internships, with whatever volunteer work you get to do. Because when you sit for an interview later on, it's not about your grades and what school you graduated
Who you
from.
are.
It's who you are.
Yeah.
And all the soft skills you have.
Yeah. And also, again, going back, obviously, before doing any of my episodes, I have to dig in a bit about the person. You said your master's, and obviously, the name of the university is something everyone's going to know, Columbia, right? Do you think it's, what value, why Columbia instead of any other university? And I'm not talking Columbia or Yale, like Columbia and something that you would say Boston University, something that's a little bit less in the ranking system. Is there a certain value to those universities? Because some people will opt to, if for in the US there's the in-state and out-of-state tuition, like all this stuff, people would prefer to go to a university in their state, you know, with their family, all this, even if they got into Harvard or Stanford or any of this stuff. So I'd ask, why did you go to Columbia and not anything else? And does the ranking of a school play a factor in your choice?
The ranking of the school plays a factor if the program is what you want.
Yeah.
And it's high quality. It all depends. So it's not Columbia University. I did not sign up for Columbia University. I went to Teachers College. Teachers College is one of Columbia's schools, and it was the best in the world. I'm not sure if it's still number one. Plus, it was in New York, so I wanted to go through that experience. I was young. So I wanted to have that experience. But going back to the question, I think the brand name does give you a push. I'll be very honest with you.
Yeah.
But I have seen enough Ivy League graduates whom I decided not to recruit or have them join my team. So it's not that you're safe.
It's not this equals this. It's
exactly.
This helps you.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah. To an extent.
And
it doesn't set the other graduates from less prestigious institutes at a disadvantage, because at the end of the day, it all boils down to what you offer.
Yeah. And going back to that, what you offer, university, all this stuff, I think for me it's clear that one of the things that I think that helped me a lot as a person is my parents pushed me a lot when I was young. Not young 16, young like elementary school. Like they pushed me to study with that rigor. Although you can, enjoy those years, right? But they pushed me a lot to do well in school, to try different things, to go, public speaking. And many of the other parents who get accepted to these top universities, their kids who get accepted to these top universities, do the same thing. Do you think that working at a young age is a very strong tool or a very good indicator that someone will eventually I'm not going to say be successful in post-secondary education?
There are no guarantees in life. Really, no guarantees in life. Even if you graduate with A plus 100%, have all the extracurriculars out there, there are no guarantees you would get into an Ivy League. And there are no guarantees if you get into an Ivy League that you would succeed and get a decent job. The life is very interesting. And you see a lot of people who choose unconventional pathways and they make it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no one responds for everyone. It's just, and there are no guarantees. You just do your best and الباقي على الله.
Yeah. صح. For parents who do, like, there are no guarantees. But at the same time, we can't say there are no guarantees and excuse that for laziness in what we do. Like we can say, there's no guarantee I'm going to get accepted to whatever program or university, but I need to try my everything to get accepted to that.
True.
صح? So what can, again, going back to it, what can parents do to their children from a young age, whether it's, K-12 or just elementary or high school or any of this stuff, to ensure that there's at least that working hard, that like طموح factor, that they
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Because when you look around, not everyone's the same. So you won't find people who want something, not university, anything, want that one car, want this one iPad, whatever it may be. There are people who want it and they'll do anything for it. And there are people who are okay, like, it, يعني, I don't care.
Mm.
Do you think that's okay for someone to not care, or should we always aim for the want the best for us in life? And then there are people who are content with the okay, and then there's the best for us in life. And if we're looking at that best part, what can a parent do to make sure that their child has that personality or character trait?
Yeah. Yeah. No, there is good parenting and there is bad parenting for sure. And you need to be on top of it as a parent to support your kids. I think maybe some parents overdo it, trying to protect the child for far too long, whereas you'll have to just leave them make their own decisions, make their own mistakes, and learn from that. Because when they're kids, it's a safe environment.
It's the safety net thing again.
Yeah. You're not going to lose $1 million if you make a wrong decision, for example. So it's a safe space for you to experiment. But sometimes I think, again, some parents overdo it and they kill the child or burden the child with so much not to provide them with room to breathe.
Yeah.
So there is, of course, a balance. And another thing I always tell parents is, even if, and I remind myself of it, even if your child goes to the most expensive school in town and it's the best school in town, that's not enough. You would still have to complement that journey with additional skills. Or for example, in your case, you're old enough to know how to complement the school journey, for example, with a podcast, other areas where you can grow and learn. But it's really the parents who will have to put in the extra hours and the extra effort to get their kid into a sports program, learn a third language or a second language. You need to fill in the gaps as a parent, not rely 100% on the school system.
When do you think what you're saying, filling in the gaps, is too much? Because, where I come from in Egypt, there are some kids who, like, their parents will put them in a swimming program and a football program and a math program. And that's okay, that's fine, that's basic. And then there are others who are, okay, there's an English, math, and science program that you're going to go to. You're going to do 4 sports as well. Some kids can do that, but how can you tell what's the best and where do you draw the line when something happens? And what is that something?
Yeah. If you have 2 identical twins, they would have a different capacity for what they can take and what they cannot take. So each parent would have to make a judgment call based on the character and the capabilities of their child. They would know to what extent do they push and when do they pause and let the child breathe.
Yeah. Do you think that this capability is something we can accept, or is it something that we can change?
It's something you work with.
So change, sort of.
Yeah, to an extent. Yeah. Okay, so capability as in, for example, if you have a kid who's an artist at heart, they're very creative. The logical side of the brain is not as high, for example. You would support them to excel in arts, and you will work with that baseline in the other programs where they're struggling and try to gradually elevate that.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
So it's about, again, it's back to the balance thing of what they're good at, what they're not good at, and just meeting them both up here.
Yeah.
And now this is, I think, the most fun part of my episodes now is where, I always talk to the guest. What questions would you have for someone like me in like a high school, this school setting? What questions would you have that you think could give more insight to you and other parents or teachers or educators around?
Oh, I was talking to my sister yesterday, and I was telling her I have only one kid. He's 12 years old now, and I can feel the gap between me and him. Although I think I'm on top of TikTok and and
Yeah.
all of that, and I try, but I'm always reminded of my parents and how I thought that there was a gap between me and them, and that they just don't get it. So, how would you help parents be closer to you or bridge that gap?
I think it's different for every parent, every relationship that someone has, son, father, son, mother, all this, it's all, or daughter, it's all different. But I think the model that I would want to follow and the model that I want followed on me, and it sort of is as well, is your parents, in my opinion, some people, they look at it as parents and their kids. There's a very fine line, you know? And they're like, my mother, I can't treat her this way. Obviously, like, you can't treat her in a very bad way or any of this. But what I mean is, it's it's scary to approach them and to be vulnerable with your parents. And then you look on the flip side, you're vulnerable with your friends. So what I would say is for parents to become friends with their kids. For me, instead of telling my friend what just happened, I tell you the first thing and then I go tell my friend. And it's also when I look at my mom, for example, the gap, like the age gap between the both of us is she got me when she was 23, very young. So she says, "You're like my brother," in that context. So I tell her I can treat her like my friend. And some parents would look at that like, no way, no, there's a line of, there's a line of respect, there's a line of this. But at the same time, I feel like you're pushing them away. What doesn't matter is, it does matter how their kids speak to you, but I think what matters more is what they also tell you. Because at the end of the day, when you look at the kids who get with the wrong group of friends and they do these bad things, it's because they could never be vulnerable about their problems with their parents. So I think it's about a parent becoming a friend with their kid, just like any other friend in school. That's how I would put it, at least.
But then, if you know your kid is on the verge of a terrible mistake, what would you do?
In my opinion, let them make the mistake. Because, like, I, with the stuff I do, with the grade, the school, and all this stuff, for some people it falls out from the sky. They're geniuses, and then for others, you need to, like, you need to get hurt by something. Like, you can't get an A on a test without feeling how a B is first. For some people, and you can't start a podcast without the first episode being trash. I'm not saying mine is, but I mean, I like to think it's not. But in that context, if they're on the verge of whatever mistake it may be, I think just let them make the mistake. They'll come to realize it's a mistake. They'll go back to you and tell you, "Hey, it was a mistake," and then you help them from there. Because it's the same thing that, again, when people ask me why I started the podcast, and I've said this story twice, and I'll say it again. It's when, if my mom tells me to eat vegetables, but my friend Ziad tells me to eat vegetables, I'm probably gonna listen to Ziad more than I would to my mom because he's my friend. And then I'll go eat the vegetables, and then I'll tell my mom, okay, I should have eaten vegetables because my friend told me. And the podcast is for me as 16, 17-year-old, for me to tell other people about what I'm doing, to show them these are conversations that we're having. And it's like what you're saying, someone in my grade might not listen to it, but they listen to it through the megaphone of this room. That's how I would put it. So, verge of terrible mistake, I think just let them make the mistake, because at the end of the day, you have more experience than them and they'll go back to you for advice. And that's what you really want. You don't want to, like, if there's an artist and I move the pen for the artist, they're not learning how to draw really. But if they're making mistakes and I'm teaching them how to draw without holding their hand, then they're becoming artists. So I think just let them make the mistake.
Yeah, yeah, and they'll have their fair share of opportunities to make a lot of
Yeah,
mistakes
exactly.
when they grow. But I think there is a limit to that. If it's something that would scar them for life or have them hurt other people,
Yeah,
a parent should,
step in.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I think that's where, again, it's like that sort of like gray area. But then it's up to everyone to decide when they should step in.
yeah,
Because some parents decide not to step in and then everything goes downhill. Others step in a bit too early. And then what happens when a parent steps in too early? They want to try it again. Because what if mama didn't tell me no?
mm,
What does she know? Let me try it first. So it's also about finding the right time between where they know it's wrong, but they haven't done it yet. And if it's on that big scale, that's what I would say to measure it at.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Anything else?
Uh, okay. How do you think what advice do you give me to parent my child who's a boy, a 12-year-old boy? Top 3 or top 5,
In the school? Or in
life in
what?
general.
In life? Look, what do you mean top five? Like pieces of advice or top
Yeah.
five or?
Top 5 pieces of
Oh, I
advice.
thought you meant top five like school ranking.
No,
Like,
no, no,
oh,
no, no, no,
okay.
no.
I think for me, especially at the age of 12, you're sort of going from being a child to being a teenager. And it's these years where your brain really adapts and your personality actually gets created. So I think, I mean, for what I think what my parents did right, and obviously there are mistakes as well, but what I would voice again through this megaphone is to let them go out and discover themselves. But the issue with that is you also find their friends not discovering themselves. They're not gonna put in the effort to to go the extra mile. So when your friends don't do it, you're probably not gonna do it. So I think push them to go out and try something new, whether it's a podcast or a new class or anything, for them to try something new and really push at the trying new stuff. Because for many kids, that shift from your high school education and your middle school education, it's so big to go from when nothing matters to when everything matters.
Yeah.
So teach them seriousness from now, in my opinion, so that this shift, this mistake doesn't happen. Which is why, like like University of California schools or colleges, they don't look at your ninth grade scores because they know there's a shift from middle to high school. But at the same time, you want to avoid having that aspect. So I think it's push them to be their best, but also have them enjoy, go out with friends and all this stuff. But the biggest thing, be very critical of who they're friends with.
Mm.
Sometimes it's bad because yani, you shouldn't be telling them who to be friends with or who to not because you're not there in school. But telling them who to be friends with or making sure they're safe, it can prevent so much because these are the same people that you're gonna be with in high school when stuff matters, when it's real life sort of, not real life, but you're getting to real life. So it's also about, I'm not gonna say telling them who to be or who not to be friends with, but on how to pick the right friends. And if they know how to do that from a young age, I think they're set for their entire life. And especially at a young age. Because when you learn it when you're older in university, I learned it from a bad experience, from a failed business, from a failed test, and that means a lot. So back to the safety net thing is teach them who to be friends with and who not to be from a young age, but don't restrict it. And if they do fall with the wrong group, it's also about stepping in at that right moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice.
Thank you. And I think with that, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming on here, being my sixth guest. Hopefully, what I hope for is for this to like blow up in the future, not like next month, like next 10 years, and then people can look back and see this episode and like about how everything's changed. And maybe we'll bring your son for a podcast and we'll
Maybe.
switch it around.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming here. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to everybody who's watching this, listening with us along, whether it's on Spotify, and I've been saying for the past 3 episodes Apple Music, but soon, inshallah. Um, and thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Subscribe, like, all that stuff, and I'll see you next time. Bye.